Today's video is on the top 5 jelly printing mistakes and solutions for handling them. I really think challenges is a word I like better than mistakes, and I really think number 4 is going to surprise you. It surprised me, especially since it varies quite a bit according to location and even for you on a day-to-day basis. And it is a big stumbling block for a lot of people. All right, let's get started. Using too much paint. Now, it's hard to accept, I think, in the beginning, how little paint you actually need on the jelly plate. So I think the tendency is to put out too much. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you, and then I'm going to show you what you can do about it. Using heavy body Amsterdam acrylic here, which is a great paint, it just does not work the best for me on the jelly plate due to how I print and what I'm trying to print. Also adding some dialoride yellow, which is one that I use all the time. And we'll brayer that out, and I think you'll be able to see fairly quickly what I'm talking about here. For me, the golden fluid acrylic brayers in really smoothly, nicely, and you see the big old ridges on the Amsterdam acrylic. That's a lot of paint, and when we go to pick that up, I think you will be able to see that it maybe is not exactly what you would want. So I'm using 24-pound copy paper here. And I am pressing all around the edges, which is where I find paint sticks the most. Okay, and I'll pull that up. And you know, the print itself isn't bad, but clearly we did not get all the paint off of the plate. And if there was a design on there, it would have been left on the plate. So I'm gonna just add a little bit of fluid acrylic to pick that up. Very small amount, so you saw how much paint I put on the first time. Just gonna add a tiny bit here, brayer this out, and pick that up. And I'm gonna use rice paper to pick that up. Okay. And actually you can see that there's still a little bit of paint left on the plate, which is not optimal. And this is kind of fun here. I mean, we have some beautiful modeling in here with this. Let me just pick up the paint that's here and we'll go to the next layer on this print. So I'm gonna go to the next layer and put out too much paint again. This time we will use more Amsterdam. This is manganese blue. I'll show you the difference too between manganese blue in the Amsterdam acrylic and manganese blue in the golden fluid acrylic. And just let you, with your eyes, check that out. So that is super thin, transparent. And there is the Amsterdam, which is very thick and ridgy. And for this print, let's do the top half with this too much paint situation. And the bottom half, I'm gonna brayer it off until it feels like it might be the manageable amount of paint to use. And I will put a, it's a lot of paint. I will put a stencil on here so you can see the difference. Okay, it's really wet. Can you see the ridging up here? And there is a little bit of lacing as well. That is from the very thin fluid acrylic. Okay, I'm gonna put this stencil on here. I know this is a Elizabeth St. Hilaire stencil from Joggles. I'll make sure you get that information. And we'll use this print, which is still actually a little bit wet, which could be problematic, and we'll press that down here. And you can see the wrinkling, the buckling of the paper, and it is less noticeable in the bottom half because that paint has been brayered off to the point where it might be successful. Okay. And I'm pressing very deliberately, very carefully, checking. That's looking pretty good. And let's see how we did on our top half. Now, it's not a huge, astonishing difference, but this top half is definitely not as clear and distinct as the bottom half is here. So, and you could get a nice ghost print with the bottom half here. The top half, you know, I guess just different, right? So we'll use this to pick up. So I'm going to do it this way, and we'll see what this looks like. Okay, so hopefully you can see, I mean, that's not a bad result, but it's certainly not the crisp effect of right here. In this next example, you're going to see what happens when I try to use a print with too much paint on it that is not dry to pick up paint that's already on the plate. I think it really illustrates both the too much paint and didn't let it dry long enough problem and shows you a workaround. All right. And we'll take this squishy print, which had too much paint, and press it down here. Now, as I press into this, I can feel that it's cool and damp. So if you feel that from the back of your paper, it is not ready to pull. Okay. Now that second layer of paint, that yellow orange, was a appropriate amount of paint, so we're actually getting a good lift here of the stenciling. But look at that first layer, because it was so goopy, I am not going to have a good print. Now here, where it was thinner, is fine, but okay. So we'll pull this up. You can see that where the paint was goopy, you have a result that, well, I'm not happy with that result. Where it was more thin and even, you have a better outcome. Plus, now your stencil, it needs to be cleaned already because it's got paint on it. That buildup will make it less likely that you have a good result because it's thick and it creates distance between your print and the paint, and it doesn't give you as successful an outcome. I hope that made sense. You can see this is still wet, and for one more too much paint example, I'm going to go ahead and put out too much white and disastrously pick that up. Oh, silly. Again, you see all the ridging. Now, for, look at that. Can you see that? Holy cow. Let's do this. So, what would you do if you wanted to have, if you put that much paint on the plate and you wanted to have a better outcome? Well, you can lift that off with the brayer. So let's brayer it to an acceptable level on the top half and keep it super goopy on the bottom. Okay, and we'll compare that. So I'm going back and forth gently. The brayer is actually picking up paint, and then I'm brayering it off on the sheet over here. And some of you out there do a fabulous job at using your pickup paper. So I congratulate you for that. I don't do that so well. All right, so I have picked up enough paint. I think I can have a somewhat of a good result on the top. The bottom is still quite goopy, and so here we go. Go with the copy paper on this. And so even up here, I've got the paper buckling a little bit. You can see it. And then down here, it's kind of extreme. So and again, you know, probably letting this dry a lot longer would at least give you some chance of success. But here, I think you're going to be able to see quite clearly the difference between the goopy layer and the result and the layer that was brayered down to an appropriate level of paint and that result. Okay, so the top half, we've got a decent, you know, sort of a decent print. The bottom half, you lost all the detail. Nothing to see here, and it's quite wet and goopy. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. You know, if you just really go way less on the amount of paint you put out, and if you find like you have too much on there, then go ahead and brayer it off till it feels like it's a thin, better, even layer of paint. All right, so save your paint, get a crispier print, and you'll be good to go. Not allowing drying time in between layers. which can lead to a muddy mess. Now, let's pull a base layer. That is Hansa Yellow Opaque, Dialoride Yellow, and some Nickel Azo Yellow. Why am I being so yellow complicated? I don't know. I don't have a good reason for that. So let's brayer this out. Beautiful. I do love a variation in the paint. I guess I've got a hair on there, so we'll take that off. Okay. Using rice paper here, and once I pull this, I'm gonna cut it in half so we can do the second part of our experiment. Boy, yeah, I knew that was feeling thick. That is 2 pieces of paper. Okay. Look how pretty that is. Yum, 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 yum. Okay. So let's go with layer number 2. Now, I said I was going to cut it in half, so let me do that. Okay. Now, we will go on to a second layer here to help me prove my point. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker, rather a little more paint on the top and a little less on the bottom. Not able to explain that logically, except that I thought I had another hair on there. This will not dry as quickly. Okay, let us go with this stencil here, which I enjoy quite a bit. And we'll put this on the bottom half. This on the top half. Oh, look, she did not cut it. She can't cut a straight line. Okay. All right, and pressing carefully to get details. And I will lift that off. That's looking pretty good. This is you can see squishier, technical term. Little more bleeding there. Can you see the difference? The how this is even and smooth lines, how this is sort of blotchy, ridgy, and bleeding in there. Okay, so, and then say you're gonna pick up the ghost. This is not dry, this is dry. We'll show you what happens. So, if this is going to cooperate with me, the bottom half will look quite nice. The top half will be interesting, but not as crispy and clear. Going with the rice paper again. And really that was kind of a was kind of a thicker coat of paint, so I feel like that should sit on the plate for a little while. Okay. Okay, so I'm peeling from the bottom up, and I am liking that ghost. And as we get up to the top, you know, I guess it just all depends on your goal. So this is not as crisp and clear. I mean, it's still interesting, but you can see that it did not give the same result as this did when this was dry. Neglecting paper choice or not choosing the right paper for the print that you want to achieve. For our purposes here today, I've got 4 papers that I'm going to put on the plate. The rice paper, which, as you probably know, is my very favorite. Copy paper, this is 24 pound. I like 24 or 32. This is printmaking paper, which is really not that much thicker than copy paper. And then the Bristol, which is really quite thick. Let us brayer out some color here. I'm feeling green. What do they say? It's not easy being green. So that was Golden Fluid Acrylic Green Gold, a little bit of Titan Buff. We'll do some Nickel Azo Yellow, and a little bit of this Dylusions Dirty Martini. No wonder. No wonder. I wanted a little bit of that. I love to vary the color on the plate. I just think it's a much more interesting print. And of course, it does get problematic if your paint viscosities are different. But that sure is pretty. Okay, so I have to work fast because I'm gonna put the rice paper here, and you can see it got wet a little bit, except that is not the shiny side, so I should have done the other side. Copy paper here, and as what I was gonna say is that it is quite, oh, that's wet too. Quite dry here today. Printmaking paper, the humidity is 17% and it's 83 degrees, which is not really optimal printing conditions, but let's just see how we do. Now, you can really see that this paper is very, very thin. I do love it, you know, because I do a lot of collage. However, I don't like the rice paper for a project like a note card, greeting card, because it's hard to cut. And for the background of a card, you'd have to collage it onto something else. But I do love, left a little bit of paint on the plate there. I do love the way I have the best success with the rice paper. So there is what that looks like. We'll go with the copy paper next. Let me see if I can pick that up. Okay, that's not bad, but I did miss that part right there, and that could have been from the way I pulled it. Nope, that's staying on the plate. So, rice paper, copy paper. I'm gonna do the Bristol last because that is the paper that I have the worst luck with. So, this is the printmaking paper. Again, leaving a little bit of paint on the plate, but that's not bad. That's kind of pretty there. And now we'll pull this Bristol. So this got left, a little bit here. It's not bad, but let's move on to our next layer and see how we do with a second layer using this same experiment here. Let's see if I can set it up the same way. So let's go round 2. Let's do this stencil here, and what goes nicely over the green. We'll do it dialoride yellow, pyrrole red light. That might be too much pigment on there. That's probably not contrasty enough. Let me go in with some Van Dyke brown here. I know that's not as glorious of color as I would like to have chosen. Something must be on the brayer there. Okay, and let's put our stencil on. And we'll try our papers again. You can see it's time to clean this stencil. I've got paint and such sticking to it. Okay, we'll go back with the rice paper here. Copy paper. Really gonna have to be careful with the edges since I left paint on the plate before. Printmaking paper. And the Bristol. Okay, and we're gonna need really good pressure. Now, this is what I do notice with the thicker papers and the cardstock and so on. I just have a harder time getting the results. It's really having trouble even because it's so stiff. It's hard to press into the stencil here. And if I don't get it before it dries, meanwhile this I have more time to work with. It's very pliable. Okay, that's already dry and I'm not able to pick it up, but that's okay. So, here is the rice paper print, second go. Here is the copy paper print second go, and we even got this area in here. So that's an improvement. I'm happy with both of those. Now we'll go with the printmaking paper. Okay, a little bit less successful. See if I can maybe pick a little bit more of that up. Nope. And then the Bristol, which is better than I expected it to be. So Bristol for when you have a sturdy and you don't mind fighting with it a little bit. rice paper for collage and so on, 24-pound copy paper, or printmaking paper for your cards. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. So this next challenge had me frustrated and confused for quite a while because I couldn't understand why from day to day I was getting such different results on the jelly plate, even though I was using the same paints and pigments, the same paper and techniques. And I finally figured out that humidity was having a big impact on the way that my paint behaved on the jelly plate. So once I determined that, I could determine also what the best range was for me to have successful results, which is in my case, it's between 25 and 50% humidity. And, you know, I just lucked out because here in Phoenix, we have an average humidity of 36%, whereas other places, Oregon, for example, where my sister-in-law was trying to love jelly plate printing, the humidity is 82% on average. And that is outside of my range of having any success at all without making accommodations. And in fact, it's not recommended, or it's suggested rather, that your acrylic paint is not going to dry well when your humidity is above 75%. It's also suggested that your acrylic paint will not dry well below 60 degrees or above 90 degrees. So I'm not saying that you can't paint and have good results or print and have good results with these different temperatures and humidities. It's just that you want to realize that with low humidity and high temperatures, your drying time is going to be very, very short. With higher humidity and lower temperatures, your drying times are going to be extended. So this is why when someone suggests a drying time to you and you try it at that drying time, it might not work. What are their conditions in their studio? What are your conditions? And this is also why I've started to add on my videos what my humidity and temperature are when I'm making the video, so you can compare it to yours. So I encourage you to get familiar with the humidity levels that you experience when you're working and start making plans and arrangements to accommodate for them. I've had people suggest to me that I get a humidifier, and you know, maybe that would be smart. I'm probably not going to do that. I've also seen people in humid places use hair dryers to speed their drying times and have good results with that. So this is the one to watch out for and make accommodations for. And I think once you do, you're going to find that you have so much more success on the jelly plate. One more mistake that I've seen beginners make is to give up too soon. I've even had a few people say, oh yeah, I tried that once and it didn't work. So I would encourage you to try more than once, and I would encourage you to keep trying. And even if things that you find in the beginning you don't like and you don't know how to work with them, for example, the lacing, you might find at some point that that's an effect that you want to use and take advantage of. And I decided I'm going to do a little quick video to show you the lacing and how you can cover the lacing or even use the lacing. And if I would have let that stop me, then I wouldn't have discovered those things. So this is a quick example of the lacing and what you can do about it. I'm going to begin by putting out some very transparent fluid acrylic because that is what I find gives me the lacing more. So this is manganese blue and some nickel azo yellow. And we'll brayer this out. And you can really see that. In fact, I need a little more paint. And of course that used to really upset me. And now I kind of value it. In certain circumstances, of course. Okay, so you can see it, the paint pulling back there. It's not happening as much on the second go round, which is also part of the way you can deal with it. But here you can see, oh, maybe if I lift it up, you can see the lacing, the skipping there. And I'm going to pick this up with a piece of rice paper. And then I'll show you what you can do to cover over that, or to eliminate or reduce the impact of the white. Not really going to eliminate it, but okay, so there you see that bubbling and lacing, which again, if you're not wanting that effect, it can be quite troubling. However, after a while, you find, oh, maybe I can use that. And I'll show you in this piece right here, I actually used a piece of jelly print with that, and I think it's quite effective. So, but if you don't want that, then we will remove it or soften it anyway. I'm going to use quinacridone nickel azo gold. Actually, we can't get that anymore, so I'm just going to use azo gold. And this is a transparent color, so you will see what's underneath, but we're going to soften the white. And this is a catalyst wedge, W06. You can't really see it, but it does say W06 there, so. And now we have virtually eliminated the white. I'm going to go into the blue and do the same thing with some phthalo blue, which is darker, maybe darker than we need, but okay, let me get efficient about this. And there you have it. So if you don't want to see that white, you can use a catalyst wedge. I imagine that a silicone spatula would work also, or possibly a credit card, but that might be a little bit too edgy. But anyway, lacing and how to work with it. So don't give up too soon. I'm even going to point you to a video that is out there that says, can these jelly prints be saved? 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. So don't give up too soon. Keep trying, keep creating, keep being curious and exploring, and I know you will find the magic. All right, thanks so much for watching. This is Vicki Reed. I'll see you next time.